Guide was helpful. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you in
All right, let's get a mic check 1 2. Let's get a mic check 1 2. All right, fellas, we are live in our beautiful studios right outside of Washington, D.C. Welcome to another episode of This Week in the PHFL, where, man, the action is hot. We're coming down to the home stretch of the season. Playoff seedings are starting to take hold. We have a lot of games right now that literally are going to impact our playoff positioning and playoff seedings. We're going to tap into Week 16 review, kind of go over the games from last week. We're going to tap into Week 17. What are some of the what are some of the games of the week? What are some of the games right now that's going to have an impact regarding the playoffs? We're also going to tap into playoff seedings. If it ended today, what will be the seedings? Who will be the matchups? We're also going to tap into the PHFL power ranking. We had definitely some changes in the PHFL power ranking, and we're also going to again go over our Super Bowl odds. Shout out to Coach BG. Shout out to Coach Coach Deasy, again, our longtime supporters. And we wasn't late, man. We said 4:40. Oh, I did say 4 o'clock. I meant to put it in there. No, I said 4:45 during the last update. But again, man, shout out to all the PHFL supporters, man. Again, that's exactly what we have, man. A lot of love, in a lot of, goodwill, goodwill and good equity in the PHFL. So without further ado, man, let's get into the show. Now, we do have a couple of coaches that's going to be joining in tomorrow's show to really break down the playoffs. So what we're going to do is we'll have an AFC coach that'll break down the NFC, and we'll have an NFC coach that'll break down the AFC. That way, again, we can keep a little bit of bias, keep the bias out of the PHFL, because, again, most coaches in the league just don't think that anybody in the PHFL is any good. So, again, we'll try to keep some type of neutrality in our overview of each of the respective playoff positionings. Now, let's go in and really focus on some of the key games in week number 16 as we go. And, again, we get into some of those games and, what was some of the games that, again, or week 15, what are some of the games right now that have, playoff ramifications when it came to week number 15? And let's go into week number 16. So in week 15, again, the, Atlanta Falcons, again, they moved to 13-2 on this season. And right now, again, they're playing, arguably the best football in the PHFL. Again, you can't knock what Coach BG right now is doing, with the Falcons. Again, they're 13-2. They have an outside shot of getting the number 1 seed. They probably won't get it, but again, they're going to be probably the number 2 seed, and again, they're going to definitely be a tough out in the NFC. The Eagles right now are 9-5. Again, they are right now battling for that 7th seed. So again, a good victory and much needed victory for the Philadelphia Eagles. The Chargers, again, put up 73 points on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, a couple of us picked the Bucks, as far as a bracket buster. And again, I'm not sure why the hell I picked Coach Woe. There's always a bad blood between Coach Woe and the old ball coach. But again, we figured that, you know what, man, we've been having some great, 11 on 11 practices and figured that, some of that would transition and transition over to game day. Unfortunately, it didn't, as the Los Angeles Chargers just thoroughly embarrassed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 73-43. Now, we just put into the chat the over-under. Right now, I don't know how many interceptions were thrown by the Bucs. 73 points. I'm going to do an over-under. And again, I haven't looked at the stats. I'm going to do an over-under of 5. So let's see how much money. I'm going to put, I'm going to put $100 down. $100, it was more than 5. So the interceptions that were thrown by the Bucs in this game, me looking at this, hold on. Again, the over under of 5. How much money? And DZ loves to bet. DZ and I should bet right now, like how many picks. Do you have over or do you got under? Matter of fact, with DZ at? Let me go into the chat. How much we gonna bet, DZ? Let's bet. Right now, again, I promise you, I have not looked at the interceptions. I'm gonna say it was at least 5. Any bets? Come on, $50 going once, $50 going twice. 74-34. I have the Bucs throwing a minimum of 5 interceptions in the game. Any bets? Going once, any bets going twice. Doesn't appear that I have any takers. Okay, you said 20. That's a bet. All right, let me see. Players, and you probably cheated too. Interceptions, he threw 7. Boy, I tell you. Hey, look here. Hold my $20. Hold my $20. These, I want to add that to the championship pot. So hold my $20. He threw 7. Boy, I tell you, man, PHFL action is fantastic. Again, the old ball coach and the PHFL media just won $20 as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers threw 7 interceptions in their 73-34 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So again, let's get into the other Week 15 action that, again, that's important to the seedings. And we're going to take a look at the seedings before we get into the power ranking and Super Bowl odds. Let's see. The Rams, again, they knocked off San Francisco. I'm not sure if the game was played or not, but right now the Rams and San Francisco are tied. I don't think the game was played. So 20-14, the Rams over San Francisco. So right now, San Francisco is tied with the Rams for the NFC West lead, with the Niners 1 game behind. Again, Green Bay right now in the pursuit of perfection knocked off the Seattle Seahawks 65-21. The New York Jets, with only 1 loss in the season, knocked off the Jaguars 61-38. Again, Carolina in a sim loss, to the Dallas Cowboys 42-7. The Giants keeping their playoff hopes alive 59-50 over the Ravens. And in our PHFL game of the week, again, this was, I don't want to call this a bracket buster, because again, this game could have gone either way. But I think, again, you have to look at Detroit, and you definitely have to give them credit. They fired their offensive and defensive coordinator, and at least from a defensive perspective, I mean, they had 7 sacks and they forced 3 turnovers. So again, from a defensive perspective, definitely played well, containing Josh Allen and the explosive Buffalo Bills offense. Josh Allen completing only 50% of his passes, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Hendon Hooker, 33 for 52, 7 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in the victory. Jamison Williamson and Anthony Schwartz, both of those guys, 96, 97 speed. I think Williamson 98 speed, 11 for 204 and 11 for 177. So again, if the Lions are going to stretch the field in that manner, then they'll definitely be, a tough out in the NFC. And now kind of looking at the playoff seedings. Right now, the Jets are the number 1 seed with a first-round bye, with Kansas City as the number 2 seed. And it looks like there was some movement. Yep, there was some movement. So Kansas City was the 2 seed, and they would face off against the Miami Dolphins, who right now hold a 1-game lead over the Denver Broncos and the Baltimore Ravens. And again, the Dolphins fell to 8-7 as a result of their loss earlier today to the San Francisco 49ers. So if the Broncos win and the Ravens win, then all three teams will be tied for the seventh and final playoff spot. The Jacksonville Jaguars at number 3 would face off against the Chargers. And now your Cleveland Browns, again, who started the season off slow, they're now 7-7, and they are in that 4th spot, and they will play against the Buffalo Bills. So that will be definitely a very interesting matchup, especially, again, with Coach FB starting to kind of get his bearings underneath of them in Cleveland. So, again, they are right now in the 4th seed in the AFC. As we get to the NFC, the Green Bay Packers right now are the number 1 seed. Again, they have New Orleans and they have Minnesota. So they probably have wrapped up the number 1 seed, with Atlanta being number 2, and Atlanta would face Minnesota in a rematch. That's probably a game, again, that as a 13-2 number 2 seed, more than likely will probably win 15 games to play Coach Balling in your wild card matchup. That's going to be a tough game for the Falcons. And it's probably, with the PHFL, it probably will be a toss-up. I don't think that, again, it's going to be that, the heavy money probably will be slightly towards Atlanta. I would probably say maybe 55-45. But again, this by all means is not a walk in the park, Atlanta versus Minnesota. The 3-6 matchup would be Carolina and Dallas. That would be a very, very interesting matchup. And then you have San Francisco against Detroit. Again, another matchup. Again, you definitely would have to lean towards Detroit. But with the talent that San Francisco has, you cannot sleep on San Francisco at all, with McCaffrey, B.A., Brock Purdy, Kittles, Fred Warner, Nicky Bosa. I mean, just a lot of talent littered up and down that roster. So that would be a very, very interesting matchup, that 4-5 matchup. And then at the bottom of the NFC race, you got the Eagles and the Giants. Again, the Giants with a tough loss today to the Atlanta Falcons, fall to 9-7, or 9-6 rather. And then you have the Eagles in Minnesota right now that are still in the hunt, with Minnesota against Seattle. Again, Minnesota probably will get the edge, but again, this will be a up and down affair with, Seattle, again, with their secondary, again, a lot of man-to-man. So this will be an interesting matchup. And then the Commanders, Coach Rail said, listen, man, it's time for me to kind of get back into the lab. It's time for me to get back on the practice field and really focus on the development of my team. So, again, they're still on the outside looking in. But, hey, if they run the table and get to 10-7, you never know in the PHFL. So, again, just competitive races across the board in the PHFL. Looking kind of at your passing leaders, which probably, again, the MVP will come from. Again, if you look at it, I mean, Jordan Love, again, 72 touchdowns and 20 interceptions. One of the thoughts about Jordan Love is the competition. And, I mean, again, you have to, I don't know whether or not you can say, listen, you know what, you play who's on the schedule. That's all we can do. Or you take some credence into the scheduling and say, listen, a lot of those stats, came against lesser competition. But, again, you definitely have to look at it and say Jordan Love right now, especially with an undefeated team, is definitely, again, at the top of the MVP pecking order, followed by Patrick Mahomes. J.J. McCarthy, again, with only 9 wins, I'm not sure how much love that he would get. Jackson Dart as a rookie is having a great season. And then Hendon Hooker as well is having a solid, season as well as far as MVP is concerned. So now let's get you over to our PHFL Power Rankings. Again, our Power Rankings now have a sponsor. It's sponsored by Nabisco. So Nabisco, go get you some cookies, cakes, and sodas through Nabisco. Nabisco, your proud sponsor of our PHFL Power Rankings. So let's get you over to, again, our number 1 team in the power ranking. And I think, again, you got to look at it and say, okay, the Green Bay Packers, the New York Football Jets. Again, the Packers right now are undefeated, and I think it's time for us to, start to give love to, Coach Spot. Again, his team is undefeated. You play who's on the schedule, knocked off Minnesota, knocked off Detroit twice. So, again, the Green Bay Packers are coming in at number 1 in the PHFL power rankings. Coming in at number 2 is your New York Jets. Again, this may be the season for Coach Shifty. I mean, right now, from a defensive perspective, they're playing some outstanding football. Their only loss is, again, to the Buffalo Bills, again, which is, no shame in that loss. Again, the way that the Bills are playing football, thus far. But they're coming in at number 2 on the season. Coming in at number 3 is your Atlanta Falcon, or your Kansas City Chiefs. So they're coming in at number 3 at 12-2. Again, when you have Patrick Mahomes and you have the speed on the outside, you have Pacheco. Again, they are always going to be, a threat in the in the AFC, and really just overall to win, the PHFL Bowl. And what Coach Twitch said, listen, man, you guys, again, I've never had a quality team like this before, and now you guys are seeing when I get a quality team, I'm choking and smacking everybody. So, again, the Atlanta – the man, frog in my throat. The Kansas City Chiefs. Again, maybe I was lying, so maybe that's why when I said all that nice stuff about Coach Twitch, that's probably not what he says, or that's probably not the realistic overview of his team. But again, Kansas City Chiefs are coming in at number 3, and also coming in at number 4 is your Atlanta Falcons. They're coming in at 12-2. I don't think there's any team right now that's playing better in the NFC than the Atlanta Falcons. Again, they're going to be a tough out. The Falcons are going to be a tough out in the NFC. Again, coming in at number 4. Coming in at number 5 is your Los Angeles Chargers. Again, are the Chargers for real? We don't know. Again, 11-3 is 11-3. They're in a competitive division. They played a couple of teams that are ranked in the PHFL Elite 8. So I think right now you really have to give the Chargers their due respect. Again, they had a tough loss against the Falcons, but one of the things that the coach mentioned afterwards was, hey, listen, we didn't have our quarterback. If we meet those guys again, which will only be in the Super Bowl, it will be a different matchup, because again, we didn't have our quarterback. So giving us our quarterback, I think again it will be definitely a different outcome. Coming in at number 5 is coming in number 6 rather, is your Carolina Panthers. Again, just that little engine that could. Again, they're winning games. It's going to be a very interesting matchup against the Atlanta Falcons towards the end of the season. That's going to determine the NFC North. Or NFC South, rather, division, and the Panthers already hold a head-to-head matchup over the Falcons. So, again, that's going to be a very interesting matchup. And now your Detroit Lions are making their reappearance in the Elite 8, again, after their victory over the Buffalo Bills. Again, you definitely have to give the Detroit Lions, their kudos, and definitely have to hold them in high regards as far as a serious threat in the NFC. And then number 8 is the Buffalo Bills. Again, their loss to the Detroit Lions. Again, I think all of the kind of the everything just almost like a perfect storm. But again, they do hold victories over Kansas City in decisive fashion. They did hold a victory over the Jets. So again, you can't take those 2 victories away from Buffalo. They still are a threat, coming in at 11-3, and then dropped out of the Elite 8. Again, we'll call them 8.5 is the Dallas Cowboys. And then, again, our team at the bottom, how dangerous are the New York Giants? Again, I think with that front 4, I think it should be damn near, I don't want to say impossible. However, I think you could play a lot of coverage on the back end with Burns and Carter coming off the edge, and then you got Dexter in the, Dexter manning the middle. That should be a defense there that literally should be hell on wheels. So, again, I know they had a tough loss today to the Atlanta Falcons. I believe it was 59-51. But again, that should be a defense that, if it's schemed correctly, should cause a lot of issues, if they were able to make it into the playoffs. But definitely as we head into reboot season number 2, that's probably one of the teams, as we get to the all season, that we're going to say, hey, this is one of our teams to watch in the in the PHFL. And speaking of the the off season, again, we have a lot of right now upcoming free agents in the PHFL right now that haven't signed their contract. So again, before we get into Super Bowl odds, let's take a look at some of the upcoming free agents in the PHFL. Again, look at some of these players and who could make a difference on a team. Nick Chubb as an X factor, maybe a team again that's looking to again maybe just add a little bit of run dimension to their offense. Again, Nick Chubb is still an X factor. Khalil Mack, again, he's 34 years old, but still a 90 overall superstar edge rusher. Again, definitely can get to the quarterback. Maybe he's a player that again could provide that pass rushing help on third downs, for a playoff contender. Levante David, again, 35 years old, X factor, just as smart as all outdoors. Again, that a player again that could be, in the middle of a defense, with his football smarts and acumen that can help out a defense move to the next level. What about Aaron Jones? Superstar, only 30 years old. Again, Aaron Jones could be a player that again, could probably go. It's probably going to go for maybe $5 to $6 million a year. But again, if he still has that superstar rating, again, he could be a player that could help out a team that again that's looking for that that third down opportunity. And then kind of scrolling down, Deebo Samuels, he's only 29 years old. He's an X factor again, so he may be highly sought after if he's not signed by the Commanders in the offseason. I'm not sure about C.J. Mosley and Amari Cooper. I think again maybe Deebo Samuels will have a little bit more of a market than those two players, specifically Amari Cooper. But again, and then kind of going down, looking at it, Matthew Judon, again, a pass rusher from Atlanta, again, superstar. Again, would he keep his dab? Not sure. But again, that's another player also, again, that could, provide some type of, quality depth as far as as a backup pass rusher is concerned. So a lot of interesting, free agents that are coming up, this off season. Marquise Brown, again, still has that 95, 96 speed. If a team is looking for, somebody to be able to take the top off the defense, then he's someone. Then you got the freak body, Justin Tucker. Again, superstar kicker, 35 years old. Will he be re-signed by the Ravens with all of his allegations? We're not 100% sure. But again, that's a player that you definitely want to look at, again, and determine whether or not, from a special teams perspective, is he a player that could, again, move the needle as far as your special teams is concerned. So that's kind of a look at some of the free agents that are upcoming, as we head down the stretch of the, PHFL reboot season number 1. And again, going into our PHFL game of the week, we're going to call this our upset of the week because, again, I don't know for sure if the Packers are going to go for it. Like, are they going to rest their players, right? Or are they going to say, you know what, we want to make history. We don't want to lose a game. We're going to go all out. However, when we look at this will be the PHFL upset of the week. The Minnesota Vikings 38, the Green Bay Packers 35. Both of these teams are top 10 in offense. So this is going to be an offensive explosion. From a defensive perspective, Green Bay is 5th, while the Vikings are 21st. Scoring, the Green Bay Packers are 3rd, while the Vikings are 15th. Scoring defense, the Packers are 2nd, while the Vikings are 15th. Sacks, the Green Bay Packers lead the PHFL in sacks, while the Minnesota Vikings are in the bottom half of the league in sacks. But again, third down conversion, both teams, again, just move the football and keep the chains moving. But we just got a sneaky suspicion that the Minnesota Vikings are going to do just enough on the offensive end to come out with a victory 38-35 over the Minnesota Vikings. Again, that is our PHFL Papa John's upset pick of the week. And again, our upset pick of the week is sponsored by Papa John's. Again, if you need a slice of pizza, go to Papa John's. Their pizzas are good. Now, let's go again to some of the other games in the PHFL for week number 16 that definitely, or week number 17 rather, that definitely is going to have some playoff ramifications behind it. Again, we're coming down to the home stretch. And again, looking at it, you have Detroit and San Francisco. Again, that's going to be a very good game because San Francisco, they need that game in order to, in order to keep their playoff and their division hopes alive. Again, Detroit, and this could be a first-round matchup. So if the seedings hold the way they are now, San Francisco and Detroit would match up. Again, Detroit can really put a nail in San Francisco coffin, well, close to it, and again, drop them to 6-9. So again, this could definitely be kind of an additional incentive for Detroit again to come out and knock off San Francisco. Again, looking at Atlanta and Washington. Again, Atlanta want to keep their their division title hopes alive, and again, Washington is saying, listen, we're going to lock in, and we're going to start to play some good football. Carolina in Tampa Bay. Again, Tampa Bay's record right now is not where the team wants it to be, but again, it was 31-30 last time these two teams met in Carolina. So again, that could be definitely a very interesting matchup between these NFC South foes. And again, Miami and Cleveland. That's another game again that, Miami right now are fighting for their playoff lives. In Cleveland right now, they're in a dogfight with the Ravens for the AFC North title. So again, another great game that has playoff ramifications. And then you got the Jets and you have the Bills. So again, revenge. You sold me out for chicken change. So again, I would imagine that the Jets are going to come in locked and loaded. Again, probably are going to have some type of special game plan for Josh Allen. So again, you're talking about some heavyweight matchups as we get to the final week of the season. So again, we talked about it. Again, our upset game of the week again is going to be your Minnesota Vikings over the Green Bay Packers. Again, 38-35. I think, again, this is going to be an up and down affair. The team probably with the ball last is probably going to win it. But again, I just think that Minnesota is just going to do just enough that's going to end Green Bay's undefeated season. It won't derail them as far as their home field advantage. They pretty much got that sewn up. But again, I think that Minnesota will do just enough to eke out a close victory in this matchup between NFC North foes. And now we get to our Super Bowl odds, and right now the Green Bay Packers are the PHFL favorites to win the Super Bowl, coming in at 2-1. They're currently 14-0, followed by your New York Jets, who are 13-1. They're coming in at number 2. Realistically, the top four teams, honestly, are they're really the Super Bowl favorites. Those top four. The Chargers are going to have things breaking right for them. Detroit, again, if they get hot, can they? Yes, they can. But we're just not sure. We're just not sure if they could just run the gamut and literally get to, knock off all the teams that they're going to need to get to the Super Bowl. So realistically, we think it's a 4-team race between Green Bay, the Jets, Kansas City, and Atlanta. Again, can the Chargers do it? Absolutely. We're going to be extremely interested in seeing them against the against the Kansas City Chiefs coming up. So again, that'll give us at least some type of barometer of the Chargers' realistic championship hopes. Again, Detroit, if they catch fire and if they played the way that they played against Buffalo, and again, during that time, Buffalo was the number 1 team in the PHFL. So again, you don't want to minimize that victory at all. And again, if they're able to play that same style, if they're able to put that same type of effort on the offensive and defensive, end of the field, on the field rather, then that's going to be, that team is going to be extremely, extremely difficult to beat. And again, we just got updated odds from Vegas with the Falcons. So the Falcons now have moved to a 5-1 favorite. And again, they really are almost tied with the Kansas City Chiefs as far as winning the PHFL Bowl. But again, these numbers are changing dramatically throughout the season, and it could be something, again, different next week, just depending on the outcome and depending on any type of notable injuries. Coming in at number 6, again, is Detroit, and then Buffalo. Again, you can't take away anything from the Bills because they have, again, a definite, advantage, again, already knocking off the Jets and knocking off Kansas City, again, two of the better teams in the PHFL, specifically in the AFC. So again, you definitely don't want to count them out. But right now, they are the long shot out of the top 7 in the PHFL at 30-1. So again, just a lot of great action in the PHFL. Kind of doing our PHFL recap as we do. Our Power 5 starts off with the Green Bay Packers, followed by your New York Jets, your Kansas City Chiefs, your Atlanta Falcons, your LA Chargers, your Carolina Panthers, your Detroit Lions, and your Buffalo Bills, with the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants on the outside. Again, we just talked about our PHFL game of the week, and right now Vegas has the Vikings knocking off the undefeated Green Bay Packers 38-35. Kind of went through our Week 15 games and Week 16 upcoming games. We still have some good games that are coming up in week number 16, again, that have, playoff ramifications. Again, you have at 7 p.m. today, the Denver Broncos are looking to keep their hopes alive against the LA Chargers. The Falcons already knocked off, as you see, the New York Giants 60-51. We have Minnesota and Seattle. Again, Minnesota looking to hold on to that 7th seed. Again, the Philadelphia Eagles against the Commanders. Again, the Eagles are trying to, hold off on that victory. We already have San Francisco knocking off Miami. Again, Dallas knocked off Tampa Bay. We got Carolina. Again, they're looking to, stay pace with the Atlanta Falcons. So, again, they're coming up against the Cardinals. And any other games. That's it. Well, again, Coach Marr, you never know when Coach Marr may have a flashback and again, be able to put up, a definite Coach Marr flashback game against the Bills. Again, it's going to be tough. But again, you never know when it comes to Coach Marr. You definitely want to make sure that you're locked in and you're focused when you're playing against him, because again, you never know when things might click and then Coach Marr, becomes the old Coach Marr and comes out with a victory. So again, this is your boy, the old ball coach, signing out from our lovely PHFL studios right outside of Washington, D.C. In tomorrow's episode, we're going to have 2 coaches in the booth right now. Tentatively, we're going to have the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, Coach BG, and we're going to have the coach of the Detroit Lions, Coach DZ, in the booth. Again, that's tentative. If it's not locked in on tomorrow, again, we got to go through their agents and making sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, again, as we get into PHFL Hard Knocks. Again, I think that's maybe what we need to do is kind of, set up a PHFL Hard Knocks segment, getting behind the scenes of each of these teams as they get prepared, for the playoffs. What teams, scare them? What teams would you rather match up? And again, what teams, would you rather face if it's the, NFC Championship versus facing them, in the wild card round or the division round? So again, we'll get into those conversations with those respective coaches. And again, we'll definitely definitely make sure that we tap into all of the PHFL playoff coaches as we head down to the final weeks of the season and head into the PHFL offs. Again, this is your boy, the Old Ball Coach, with another episode of This Week in the PHFL. This is your boy, and I'm out.